What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, your home for the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. First game back from the All-Star break, the Dodgers jump out with a 10-4 victory over the Rockies. Daniel, there's lots for us to talk about, but I have to start off with the obvious one here. 3 Oregon Ducks pitchers closed this one out for the Dodgers. My alma mater, University of Oregon. I was saying beforehand, not a ton of Oregon Ducks in the major leagues to see 3 guys all from the same team close it out. I know minor storyline to everybody here but me, but kind of a cool deal for 3 guys who played together.
Yeah. The first thing I want to say is congratulations to you. Like you said, it's not a huge deal for most of us, but this is your night right here. So let's celebrate it, right? Three Oregon Ducks in to close it out. And also they were all they were all at Oregon at the same time in 2013. So that's pretty cool right there. Those guys, they could have been close friends in college, and now they're all pitching for the Dodgers, and they all, pitched in the same game, closed it out. So that was pretty fun. Fun overall night. Good win for the Dodgers. Good way to start out the second half there. Looking around the NL West, the Giants and Padres both won in convincing fashion tonight as well. So, you got to keep pace. So it was a good win for the Dodgers. And good way to start off the second half.
Now I have to ask. I mean, is this the perfect Dodger game? They jump out to a 5-0 lead early. It does get close at 5-4, but then they jump back to 7-4. It's just the perfect, there was enough stress. You never felt like the game was in doubt. It's 5-0 in the first inning. It's kind of cruise control, just a casual, enjoyable night of Dodger baseball. If you could draw up the perfect Dodgers game, is this how you would draw it up?
Well, as a Julio Urias fantasy owner in a league that counts quality starts, I will say the 5.2 innings, 4 earned, isn't exactly perfect. I would have liked a nice 6 innings, 3 earned, and then we could have called it perfect. But I'm just splitting hairs at that point. You're right. This was as good as it gets. The game was never really in doubt. Like after the grand slam, it got a little close, but then the Dodgers tacked on a few runs right after. So yeah, and also it was like a group effort.
Yeah.
It wasn't like one guy drove in 7 or anything. Like you tweeted out, 11 different guys got a hit, and that includes Julio got a hit. Phil Bickford got his first career hit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty perfect. I mean, there was no stress involved. They scored runs early, so you can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, Ari points out Coors Field is stressful. Anywhere else other than Coors Field, this might have been the perfect
That's
thing.
true.
It feels like bad things always happen there, but you said it. 11 different Dodgers finished the game with a hit. All 11 guys who took at least one at-bat finished with a hit. The Dodgers have 14 total. They also walked 5 times. They scored 10 runs. The irony is they could have scored more. They leave 9 guys on base, 10 guys actually, I believe, on base. They left runners in scoring position in the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 7th, and the 8th. So it felt like, they scored 10 runs and they had 6 different innings that ended with runners left in scoring position. But let's do a run through of the game. We'll talk players of the game, and then we can look ahead to the week that's coming up. The first inning is where things get going. Mookie Betts, leadoff double. One of the guys on the broadcast, I can't remember if it was oral or not, but pointed out that it was he had a couple hits tonight where he pulls it down the left field line, but he elevates the ball. Those were pitches that it seemed like he was rolling over early on. He leads off the game with a double. Max Muncy gets out. Justin Turner hit by pitch. Will Smith walk. Bellinger 2-run single. Chris Taylor 3-run home run. 1 out into the game, and it's already 5-0 against a guy in Chichi Rodriguez who came in with, I believe, the worst opponent's batting average in all of baseball. Almost 300 guys hitting against him. That went up tonight, I think. So the Dodgers are up 5-0 in the first. They strand 2 more runners in the second inning. Could have been worse. Will Smith robbed of what looked like would have been a 2-run double in the second inning.
Yeah, that was a nice play.
Blackman with a great catch there. The third, the Dodgers strand another runner at second. The bottom of the third is where things got dicey for the Dodgers. Julio Urias, who was kind of cruising up until this point, he loads the bases. CJ Cron absolutely obliterates a ball. He hit this ball where home run derby balls were landing the other night. Grand slam for him. So 5-4. The Dodgers come right back. Will Smith, as I said, robbed of a run-scoring double earlier in the game. He comes back with a 2-run double off the wall. He made sure to get this one about 6 feet further so that it wasn't catchable. Dodgers jump up to a 7-4 lead, extend it from there. Again, stranding runners at first and second. They score again in the 5th. Will Smith, yet again, another 2-run single for him. It's 9-4 at that point. 10-4 after Mookie Betts sac fly. They strand some more runners from there. And then it was just the Oregon bullpen. It was just Jake Reed,
Yep.
Clevenger, Reed, and Sherfy to close this thing out. The Dodgers strand more runners in third, but that's the story. The Dodgers 10-4, comfortable win. This is kind of the perfect way to start off the second half of the season in a way because everybody gets going. There were some guys, I mean, like, I wouldn't say everybody feels great. I know Bellinger had the 2-run single early on. He was 1-for-4 with 2 strikeouts. Muncy gets a hit late. He was 1-for-5. So it's not one of those things where everybody feels great because they had so many at-bats that even if you had 1 hit, you go 1-for-4, 1-for-5. But still, to not have a 0 there, first game out of the All-Star break, a few days off for some guys who weren't playing in the All-Star game, it's a pretty good start to the second half if you're the Dodgers.
Yeah, yeah, and I think the main thing is they didn't have to use any of their main
Whoa,
bullpen guys,
whoa.
outside of I know, outside of
Okay,
Big
thank
Bird
you.
Dog. But I mean, for the 3 Oregon guys to hold it down there, that's great because you got 2 more games coming up at Coors Field here, and then a big series against the Giants, and who knows, like there could be a bullpen game, coming down the line here. We still only got 4
Yeah.
starters at the moment, so just for those guys, any night, all the main guys, Kenley, Trinan, those guys, for them to not pitch, that's got to be considered a win there, especially when you look at for most of the season, like a 10-4 lead was by no means safe for the Dodgers for most of the season. So credit to your Oregon boys for coming in and getting the job done. The bullpen, Julio gives up that grand slam, and then the Rockies don't score from there. So that's impressive, even though, the Rockies offense is nothing to go crazy over. Like, it's still Coors Field at the end of the day. So, good overall night for the bullpen, I'd
Yeah,
say.
and speaking of pitching, what did you think of Julio's performance? 5 2/3. He does allow the 4 earned runs, 1 walk, 7
Mhm.
hits, as well as 2 hit by pitch. So he allows 10 base runners to reach in 5 2/3. Does allow the grand slam. 89 pitches. He did throw 61 for strikes. That's a big thing for me. I mean, when he has struggled, it's typically because he hasn't been around the zone. So throwing
Yeah.
61 of 89 pitches in the zone is a nice step for him. But what did you think of Urias overall in the night?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you just look at, the box score, it doesn't look like a great outing, like 5.2 innings. That's good length, but it's not like he went, 7 innings or anything. He gave up the 4 runs all on the grand slam, so it doesn't look great, but I'd say he pitched pretty well. Outside of that 1 inning, that was when all the damage came, and it all came on 1 pitch. I will say Crone, like you said, Crone got all of that ball. It looked like one of the home run derby homers, and he knew it right
Yeah.
away. So that was unfortunate. But I'd say outside of that, it's Coors Field, so you can't really criticize the guy too much. He got through 5.2, which is, not bad.
Yeah.
He, like I just mentioned, saving the bullpen is important right now. So for him to at least give some sort of length is a good thing. He didn't think he only had 4 strikeouts, so he wasn't getting a whole lot of swing and misses today. They had I think they had 7 or 8 hits off of him. So I'd say it wasn't a great outing, but it was fine. And especially considering, how many early runs he got, you want when you have a 5-run lead or whatever, you just want to go out there and make sure you're pounding the zone. Like you said, he threw 60 strikes in 89 pitches, which is solid. So, overall, not a bad outing by any means, not his best, but it's definitely we'll take it at Coors Field.
Yeah, a couple of people asking in the chat. The 4th starter we're referring to is David Price, who's been referenced as a guy that they're planning on stretching out. So he might not be a full-fledged starter this time around, but he is
Mhm.
presumably the 4th starter. Staying on Urias real quick. I tweeted this out when it was, I think, going into the 5th inning, and I said it'll be interesting to see what Roberts does here because on one hand, you've got a blowout of a game, and so it's an opportunity to rest Julio, a guy who has long since passed his career high in innings, and we're barely halfway through the season. On the other hand,
Yeah.
you've got David Price going every 5th day, and then a bullpen game or maybe a Josiah Gray game after him. So it kind of seemed like it was going to be an interesting decision for him whether to rest Urias or whether to try and stretch him out. He only throws 89 pitches. In your mind, was that a conscious effort for Dave Roberts to get him out of there? It was kind of unique to not let him finish the 6th. He was only at
Yeah.
89 pitches. He wasn't in trouble in the inning. There was nobody on base. So what did you think about that decision? Were you surprised? Do you think there's something there, or was it just a decision that they didn't want to have to bring in a reliever that was forced to face 3 batters maybe?
Yeah, I was a little curious about that one too. Like you said, he wasn't like it wasn't like he was getting in trouble or anything. He didn't look tired. 89 pitches, I think that's a good number right there. But like, let's say if he faces one more batter, what's he going to be at? 93, 94
Yeah.
pitches? Like, that's not any different than 89. So I was a little curious why he didn't just stay in to get the last out of the six. But at the end of the day, it's fine. They had, they just had 4 days off or whatever, so the bullpen is fresh. Guys were ready to go as we saw. So I think the length was fine. You don't want to stretch them to 100 pitches when you got a big lead like that, but 89, that's still a full outing, I'd say. I don't think it was shortened by any means. I was with you. I was kind of thinking around the fifth inning, like maybe they take him out after five. I
Yeah.
think he was at like 73 pitches after five or something. That would have been a bit of an abbreviated outing. But at the end of the day, like you said, without starters right now, with David Price, who's in the rotation but not giving you a whole lot of length, I think it's kind of more important to save the bullpen now than it is to kind of give Julio some
Yeah.
rest. I think hopefully, you could kind of look down the line and hopefully, when Kershaw gets back, you mentioned Josiah Gray, maybe he's up. When the starting rotation is more healthy, maybe you could, maybe skip a start for Julio, or maybe have like a piggyback type of situation a couple times through, something like that to limit him, because I think we're both we're both in agreement, and we've been talking about it for a while. Like, you're gonna have to limit him at some point. Like, I don't think they're just gonna let him go out and throw 210 regular season innings. I know it's been a necessity to this point, but you at least hope down the line, and also with the trade deadline, maybe you pick up another starter that you could rest him down the line. So yeah, I think it was not a full outing. Like, he didn't go over 100 pitches, but also I wouldn't call it an abbreviated outing. He still got up to 89 pitches, almost through 6 innings. That's a full workload,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, and interesting. I'm not going to make too big of a deal of it. I joked on Twitter. I didn't understand the decision to go to Bickford there. The Clevenger, Reed, Sherfy decision makes perfect sense to me. Those are the guys you
Yeah.
trot out. Bickford was a weird one when you've got Vesia, you've got Alexander, you've got Nunez all out there. So I try not to read too much into it, but when you look at some of the stuff they've done, I remember for the longest time, Jimmy Nelson was the guy who would come into these games, and we were all like, it didn't make sense, but then you would see he wasn't getting trusted in high leverage situations. So we'll see what they make of that. The Dodgers also have an expanded bullpen at the moment. They brought Sherfy up and sent Rex down. So I'm not sure if that's just because they feel like, hey, maybe we'll burn a couple arms early in this series and then send those guys down. Curious to see. Sherfy is a guy who is out of options, so he cannot be sent down. He would have to be cut. So they also just got a chance to look at him and, maybe you make a decision and say, hey, this is a guy we do want to keep around or not. They're
Yeah.
hoping that they find another Phil Bickford-esque guy. Sure, of the three Ducks, I'll say this. Sherfy was the guy that was the most memorable from my perspective. He was their closer. He was absolutely nasty as a closer in college. So it's not, and Justin Lorber, even on our show, he said, he's been a fine, solid, low leverage reliever. He's not going to be your
Yeah.
closer, but his career numbers are not terrible. He's not one of these guys with like an 8 ERA or something across a bunch of innings. He's just been solid for a low leverage reliever. So let's look.
Yeah, and I think just to talk about Sherfy real quick, I think when you see a guy like Andrew Friedman like pick that guy up, you mentioned he's out of options. So you're basically, when you claim that guy, you're guaranteeing him a spot on the active roster.
Yeah.
So you're not doing that unless you see something in him. Like you said, he's been mainly, a low leverage guy. So we're not saying he's going to come in and be like a setup guy or
Totally.
anything, but the way that the back of the bullpen, or the low leverage guys have performed this year, they're kind of just throwing darts and looking for anyone at this point. So who knows? Maybe Sherfy will end up sticking around.
I mean, in his career, 54 appearances, 3.16 ERA. So this is a guy
Solid.
who 2017, 18, and 19 with Arizona, didn't play for anyone last year, was with the Giants, 4.22 ERA in 10 appearances before that. But I mean, a 3.16 ERA, a whip under 1.2, like that's not even low leverage. That's middle relief, for most teams.
Yeah.
And again, some of the guys we've seen the Dodgers call up, the Mitch Whites, the Edwin Ucedas, I mean, Sherfy is a massive upgrade over those types of guys. So we'll see. I mean, again, he could be a guy that's just up for 2 days and then gets cut.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's, the Giants have a good bullpen. So coming from a team like that, it's not like he got cut from a terrible team. So let's flip and look to the hitters. Offensively for the Dodgers, again, they jump out to a 5-0 lead in the beginning of the game. Mookie Betts finishes 3 for 5. Will Smith 2 for 4. Muncy, Turner, Bellinger, Taylor, Pollock, Lux, Urias, and Bickford and Pujols all had 1 base hit apiece. Muncy with a hit and a walk, Turner with a hit and a walk, Bellinger with a hit and a walk, Smith also had a walk, and Pollock had a hit and a walk. So a bunch of guys reaching multiple times. Offensively, I mean, the story here feels like Mookie Betts getting those 3 hits. He's 3 for 3. He ends up getting out his final 2 plate appearances, but 3 for 3, 1 double. Probably would have had a second if Julio wasn't ahead of him on the base paths.
Yeah.
Was there something? I mean, and the thing with Mookie, he came in on a heater. They pointed this out. He was 5 for 7 in the 2 games leading up to this. He had 7 runs, 2 homers, and 4 walks. So he had reached 9 of his last 11 plate appearances. Tonight he goes 3 for 5. He adds 2 more runs. So he's up to 9 runs in 3 games, adds an RBI, again, a double as well. Are you seeing something from Mookie in these 3 games that is sustainable moving forward?
I mean, I think a lot of it probably just comes down to health. You know, he sat out the All-Star game just to get those extra days of rest. He got criticized by some people for it, but you know, his goal was to get 4 days of rest. You know, he's been dealing with some nicks and bruises. No major injuries or anything, but it's been one thing after another, it feels like. So, you know, hopefully those 4 days did him well, and it sure looked like it tonight. You mentioned, you know, 3 hits. He also had a sac fly, so he was you know, doing everything tonight. It looked like. You mentioned earlier when we were talking about him, just him getting some air under the ball. We've seen him hit a lot of balls hard, and he's pulled a lot of balls, and it just kind of always has seemed to find, you know, the third baseman's glove so far this season. So if he could get some air under it and just hitting those balls down the line, you know, that's obviously a double or maybe even a triple for him. So yeah, it's definitely good to see Mookie. I've said, you know, time and time again that this offense comes and goes with him. He's the table setter at the top of the lineup. So for him to start off the second half well, and he basically, like you said, he picked up where he left off before the break. He was already swinging it well. So that's great to see. I tweeted that I think Mookie's going to have a monster second half, and it's off to a good start.
Yeah, the other guy that stood out offensively for the Dodgers was Will Smith. Again, 2 for 4 with 4 RBIs, also a walk. One of those outs that he recorded, again, was a great play away from being a 2-run single, or a 2-run double, excuse me. So he very easily could have finished this game 3 for 4 with 6 RBIs. Obviously, not a guarantee that things would have played out the same way, but he's a guy who, you know, look, we're not going to rehash the All-Star thing. It's over with. Apparently, most people don't think he's one of the top 5 catchers in his own league. But Will Smith off to a great start. He's a guy who, as good as he has been, it's not up to the level that we've come to expect. He gets off to a great start for the Dodgers tonight.
Yeah, and I know we both, you know, expressed our displeasure with him not making the All-Star team, but kind of similar to the Mookie thing. Like now it might have been, you know, a blessing in disguise. He was able to get 4 days off there. You know, he hasn't been injured at all this season, but it's also important to remember, like, this is Will Smith's first full 162 game big league season. Like, he had the shortened season last year and he came up halfway through 2019. So he's never played a full 162 games in the big leagues. So he definitely could use the rest there for the All-Star break. And it's good to see him get going. I think he was kind of had a little cold stretch before the break there for a little bit. I don't think anything like eye-opening or anything, but he wasn't quite swinging it the way that we're accustomed to seeing. So it's good for him to get a couple knocks here. Like you said, he should have had another one. Charlie Blackmon made a great play on that. But yeah, I mean, anytime Will Smith is going, it's fun to watch because I think we're both in agreement, he's probably the best, you know, overall hitting catcher in baseball right now.
Yeah, absolutely. With Buster Posey hurt, I mean, Posey's got better numbers this year, but based on recent history, etc. So Peyton Spear on Periscope agrees with us there. Laura mentions the other guy, Chris Taylor, the All-Star. He stood out to her. Interesting game for Taylor. He has the 3-run home run in his first at bat, and then he goes 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts after that. I did see some interesting statistics on Taylor's home run. I think it was something like the wind blew that ball in 40 feet, and then because they were at Coors Field, it traveled an extra 39, so it was almost dead even. Crushed that baseball, sets the Dodgers up 5-0. But good to see him. You know, it's a guy that, admittedly, he's been struggling of late. He's been really, really good this season, but the last 2 weeks, last month, have not been his best month. So another guy that you love to see that get going. He doesn't strike me as one of those guys that is going to get too high or too low. He's, you know, him and Muncy are the two that I don't really get too worried about where they're at because the at-bat level just kind of stays the same. Justin Turner, probably in that category. So that's on one side. The flip side, you have Cody Bellinger, who goes, again, first at-bat, comes up, 2-run single. You start thinking, hey, maybe things are going to get going. He goes 0 for 3 with a walk and 2 strikeouts after that. Some of those at-bats back to being really ugly, swinging at sliders and breaking balls. It's almost like when the bullpen guys come in, he just loses all focus. So Taylor and Bellinger, what did you see from them tonight, and anything you're kind of excited about or worried about moving forward?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I feel like those guys are like kind of like polar opposites. Like I feel the same way about Chris Taylor. He's just so even keeled. Like he's never too high, never too low. And you mentioned like he after the home run, he went 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. That's pretty similar to what Bellinger did, but like it's a lot more noticeable when
Yeah.
Bellinger does it. I'll say Chris Taylor, even when he's striking out, he's still putting up, still battling up there. He's still putting together competitive at bats. Whereas feel like when Bellinger strikes out, a lot of the times it's just 3 pitches. He takes a couple bad swings, or he takes 2 pitches down the middle and then swings at a ball in the dirt
Yeah.
or a high one or something like that. So yeah, I mean Bellinger. I guess we just gotta wait and see. I still maintain he's gonna get hot at some point. He's too good of a player to just be this bad for a full season. And I know he's been hurt for most of it, but let's just hope he could stay healthy in the second half. And if he does, I think he'll get hot at some point. But when you look at the Dodgers lineup, it's not how it used to be. They don't really need like Belly to be like the guy. They just need him to be a contributor.
Yeah.
We've talked about all the guys. Like Bellinger is probably the 6th or 7th best hitter on the team right now. So he doesn't have to do too much. I think the base hit he had in the first inning to kind of get it all started, I thought that was good. He didn't really hit it hard.
Yeah.
He got jammed a little bit, but he kind of just muscled it in there. Wasn't trying to do too much and drove in a couple big runs there. So that was good to see. I'd honestly like to see more of that. I think sometimes he's just kind of trying to swing for the fences too much. I'd like him, I like to see him try going the other way more. Maybe drop down a bunt if they got the shift on. Just anything to kind of get you going, because he's a very streaky hitter. Like I mentioned how we both mentioned how Taylor's kind of even keeled, never gets too high, never gets too
Yeah.
low. Belly gets super high or super low. So he just kind of needs to get going. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, we got 2 games left here at Coors Field. That's the best place to break out of a slump. Maybe he'll get going in the next couple days here, which would be big going into the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, just as a refresher, he's hitting 179 with a 295 on base and a 301 slugging percentage. So he's hitting 50 points worse than Julio Urias, and he's got a slugging percentage 4 points higher than Julio. So not great from Cody Bellinger. He has missed time a couple different times, so could be something there. One last thing on Bellinger, Laura on our chat on YouTube. Thanks, by the way, for all the folks joining us via Facebook, via YouTube, via Periscope, via Twitter. Laura, is it that he's trying too hard? Like when you look at Bellinger, is it a mechanical thing? Is it a mentality thing? Like how would you classify what you're seeing from Bellinger and why he might be seeing the struggles that he is?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a hitting coach, so I'm not too sure on the mechanics. I will say it doesn't ever look like his like I feel like his mechanics are just always changing.
Yeah.
Like even when he's like going well, it just feels like he has a new stance or a new load like every other game. So I can't really comment on the mechanics, but I do think it kind of looks like he's maybe trying a little too hard, pressing a little bit. He's a guy who's used to having
Yeah.
success. He hasn't really. I'd be willing to say he hasn't really struggled like this in his entire life. Like he's obviously a star growing up. Drafted in the second round
Yeah.
out of high school, and then had success all the way through the minors until he gets called up. Then he's the rookie of the year. 2 years later, he's the MVP. So he's not really a guy that's used to struggling. And if you look at you said the numbers, they're not great, and I'm sure he's well aware of that. So maybe he's trying a little too hard. But I hope he realizes what I just said a couple minutes ago. It's that he doesn't have to be the guy.
Yeah.
They got so many other guys in this lineup. I hope he could just kind of realize that, maybe relax a little bit and just kind of settle in, because I feel like this season there's been so much going on with him, whether it be, the injuries or whatever. He just hasn't really been able to settle in. Now he's going to be a dad, by the way. We haven't mentioned that. Congrats to him and his girlfriend on that. Hopefully maybe he'll get some dad strength here, sooner rather than later.
I can attest to the dad strength. I can't attest to being Cody Bellinger and experiencing dad strength, but if you got to lift some moving boxes or something, it definitely helps. I mean, to your point, looking through, you would trust Mookie more than you trust Bellinger, Muncy, Turner, Smith, Taylor, probably AJ Pollock. And there's 6 guys right there that you trust more.
Yeah.
Corey Seager coming back in just a few days. In the right situation, I think we'd trust Pujols maybe more than we would trust him. So, I mean, outside of Austin Barnes and Gavin Lux, I think Bellinger is kind of down there. So definitely something to keep an eye on. to your point, I don't know if that reduces pressure in a healthy way, or maybe reduces pressure in a way in which like he just starts free swinging, and that's kind of what we're seeing.
Yeah.
But a huge storyline, I would say, for the Dodgers, because offensively we're not worried, but if he can't get it going, we've got 70 games. He's got plenty of time to get things going, but he's definitely a guy that is going to add something to the Dodgers. If you're talking about a team that is struggling when it comes to starting pitching, it sure helps if you have an MVP sitting in the middle of your lineup and can score 6, 7, 8 runs every night to sort of offset what's going on night 4 and night 5 through the rotation. So let's do this. Let's do player of the game right now. We'll get to some questions from folks in a little bit, and then we can talk about future stuff. I've seen some questions in there, so hang on to those. If you've already sent one, just feel free to resend that when we get there. But for now, submit who your player of the game is tonight, okay? So player of the game, Dodgers win 10-4. Who is your player of the game tonight? I'm going to throw one out there just because I don't think this person's going to get mentioned, although it's interesting. I want to give a shout out to Albert Pujols. Passes Willie Mays on the hits list tonight. I think Fabian Ardaya was the one who pointed out he tied Willie Mays in home runs in Coors Field. Then he comes back later and passes Willie Mays. I believe 10th maybe all time on the hits list. I could be wrong on that number, but anytime you pass Willie Mays, that's impressive. So not necessarily player of the game, but I would say deserving of a little shout out. Who do you have for your player of the game, Daniel?
Yeah, with Pujols, I feel like every game, every time he gets a hit, every time he hits a home run, he's passing someone on some list, reaching some milestone. It's honestly incredible, and I'm glad, we get to witness it. I know we didn't have him for his prime years by any means, but it's really cool to get him kind of at the end here, as he's still producing, to his credit.
Yeah.
He had an infield single tonight.
Just beating it out as we all expected. Just to clean it up, 11th place on the hit list. It was hit number 3,284 to pass Willie Mays. I'll give one more shout out just because I'm reading Matt Moreno's tweet. Julio Urias, 12th win tonight. He moves into first place as far as wins in Major League Baseball. So shout out to Julio.
Also, yeah, I think I forgot if it was Tim Neverett or Oral Hershiser mentioned Julio is number 1 in baseball in run support.
Yeah.
He averages like 7 runs of support per start. So even though Julio's been great, that also is a big reason why he leads the league with 12 wins there. For my player of the game though, I'm gonna go. It's kind of a toss-up between Mookie and Will Smith. I'm gonna go Will Smith though. He drove in 4 runs, had 2 hits. Like we talked about, he had another ball to right field there that easily could have been another hit and another 2 RBIs. So I thought he had a really good overall night. There wasn't. I feel like there's no one that really stands out as like, oh yeah, that guy was the player of the game. It was kind of, the Dodgers getting contributions from everyone. Someone else worth mentioning, Phil Bickford, first major league hit. That's not something that happens every day. And also, his running from second to third, that was awesome.
It's like we're not expecting you to be athletic, but can you just run like a normal human being? Like, good Lord.
Well,
my goodness.
And the thing is, the ball's like at the backstop. He didn't even have to sprint like that, but hey. Good for him, relievers don't get to hit too often, so he made the most of his, one opportunity on the base pass.
That's the thing is, like, if you look like an idiot swinging a bat, I'm like, hey, you know what? I don't blame you. Like, do you not run? Like, do you never run? You don't, like, run in the – like, running seems like a very basic human skill. Like, he looked like an absolute fool. And, he did go to Oaks Christian, my rival high school, so we'll just blame Oaks Christian for that part of his upbringing. But my goodness. I mean, like, I loved seeing him out there. It was hilarious. And he's just running right at, it's like, my goodness, brutal.
Very non-athletic, yeah.
So Jason Austin wants to know, well, he's saying, hey, we know Jeff's going to pick Will Smith here. Daniel steals my Will Smith pick. I will say this to clean up your Urias stat about run support. Eric Steven pointed this out. 7 times this year when Julio's on the mound, the Dodgers have scored 9 or more runs. 7 times. So I think they have 3.
You're gonna win a lot of games when that's happening.
Well, yeah, it's like whoever the Padres. Your boy Chris Paddock was on the mound for the Padres tonight. 5 innings, 4 earned. Well, the team scores 24. It doesn't matter. You get the +1 in the win column there. So
just got to get through 5 on that
totally.
night like that.
Yeah, he's at 4 innings, 4 earned probably, and telling the manager he's like, I'm staying for the 5th. It's 22-4. Like I could get up to 7 before you pull me out. Give me the win here. I'll go Mookie. Mookie's the other obvious one here, and I mean he goes 3 for 5. All 3 of those kind of early in the game when it was needed. So big stuff from Mookie Betts there. And just to the point we made, I mean, he easily could have finished with 2 doubles if Julio wasn't ahead of him on one of those. Julio had no interest in going first to third on what could have been a double down the left field line. Don't blame him. That's fine. We don't need any pulled hamstrings. But
Yeah.
just really good to see. Leading off the game with a double, getting on the sacrifice fly later in the game. So just good stuff from Mookie Betts. And it's mostly an optimistic looking ahead saying, man, if this is the Mookie Betts that we're going to get moving forward, this stretch that he's on, where, like I said, 8 for his last 12 with 4 walks over that stretch. So he's reached in 12 of his last 16 plate appearances, 9 runs in 3 games. That's remarkable. 2 home runs, 1 double. So good stuff from Mookie. So he gets my player of the game. Going through Kenneth Spainhour, he's got Mookie as his player of the game. Let's see. Kenneth wanted to give a shout out to Pujols as well. Bruce Davis has got Chris Taylor. I mean, Chris Taylor, Deborah, the same thing. He deserves some credit. 1 for 5, so not the most impressive, but he does get the home run and kind of, I guess that qualifies as the game-winning home run. He put them ahead past the 4 runs. So I mean,
he also had that pretty
Great.
nice defensive play behind second base. I forgot who hit it, but that was a nice play. He started a couple nice double plays, so he played good defense tonight as well. So yeah, Chris Taylor definitely deserves some recognition.
Yeah, I mean, and that big play was with runners at first and second in the first. So yes, the Dodgers are up 5-0, but if that inning drags on and they give up a run or two, who knows how the game is different. So Chris Taylor, he had an unbelievable, he's definitely the player of the first inning. We'll give him that award. 2 through 9 might be a little more dicey.
He got off to a great start.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let's get to some questions here. If people have questions, I've seen a couple. It might have been Guillermo. Apologies if that wasn't you. But somebody was asking about a tweet that I had posted. Some good news for the Dodgers from the draft perspective. Their 9th and 10th round players, both that they were 9th and 10th round draft picks, have both signed. They both signed for $2,500 as a signing bonus. For context on that, their slot values were both around $150,000 and $140,000. They accepted $2,500 apiece, mostly because they were seniors in college with no real option to go back to. It's just brutal for them because if they had gone undrafted, they could have made more money than that, but they didn't. So brutal system for them. This is the hard part. I mean, in one hand, and I guess I'll ask your question. I say it's a brutal system. On one hand, these guys have the opportunity to get drafted in high school. They have the opportunity to get, let's say they go to a 4-year school. They can get drafted out of high school. They can get drafted out of their junior year, and then they can get drafted after their senior year. So on one hand, it sucks for guys like this because they have no leverage. The Dodgers are not required to pay them something like they are in the NFL or the NBA for a particular spot. And yet they have no leverage. The Dodgers know their alternative to turning down $2,500 is basically to sit out of baseball for a year. The flip side is these guys could have been drafted in high school. They could have been drafted as juniors, and they weren't. They weren't good enough in either of those moments. And so I don't know. Is that the sign of an unfair system, or is that the sign of a more fair system? Because it's the only sport in which you can be drafted 3, potentially 4 times if you go the JUCO route. You can be drafted 4 times, and that's an advantage.
Yeah. I mean, I will say as a former pitcher who didn't get drafted, I mean, I would have taken
$2,500
anything just to play professional baseball. So you can't be too mad, but I definitely think it's not exactly fair. And it was definitely, strategic on the Dodgers' part to draft those guys where they did. You and Justin talked about this on the couple draft shows you did. The Dodgers only get a certain amount of pool money for their top 10 their top 10 round picks. So now that they were able to sign these 2 guys, their 9th and 10th round picks for less and significantly less, basically nothing here, that means they have more money to give the other guys, some of which were high school players or college juniors or whatever that aren't, obligated to sign. They have the option to go back to school. You might have to pay some of those guys more. So now you have a little bit extra. It's not anything crazy. Like it's like 100,000 for each guy or whatever, slightly more than that. That's not making a huge difference for maybe like the first couple rounds when the signing bonuses are like 2 million and such. But it definitely saves you some, and you have that money to play with, which is good. And also just, signing your guys is always positive. You don't want to lose, guys you spent draft picks on. So we'll see. I'm not sure, a whole lot about these individual players. Maybe we'll see them down the road. And I will say it is unfortunate that, once you're in the minor leagues, you don't get paid a lot. That's been talked about a lot. They don't even make like a living wage. So I think most of them are kind of bank on that signing bonus to at least get some money in the bank to live off of. So unfortunately, these guys won't be getting that. But hey, it's all worth it once you get to the big leagues, if you get to the
Yeah,
big leagues.
absolutely. And to your point, the Dodgers did draft a high school player in the first round as well as the third round, which was their second pick. And so many people believe that both of those guys will probably require at or above slot. Justin Lorber pointed out, ranks 4 through 10. All of those guys could very well go under slot. So the Dodgers also had a high school kid they drafted in, I believe, the 13th round, who is unlikely to sign, but just any dollar that you can save in rounds 4 through 10, that even if you can still sign first and second, who knows, that allows you to throw some extra money at rounds 11 through 20. So there we go. Jason says, hey, by the way, with Dodger injuries, Daniel, you might still have a shot at the big league. So you never know. Are you stretched
Hey,
out?
if
Are you
they're
stretched out,
looking for
Daniel?
guys, just let me know. Give me a week or so to get my arm up to speed.
How many pitches you good for a week from today?
A week from today, I'll be good for 25
And what
pitches.
are we touching? 82?
We're touching 81, maybe. No, not even close. Back in the day, I threw harder than that, but now I'd be lucky to get to 65 or 70.
Okay, couple questions here. A couple questions. We'll go with Kenneth first. Albert Pujols. Do you think the Dodgers are an option for bringing Pujols back a year from now?
I definitely think so. I mean, anytime they show that guy in the dugout, he's smiling, he's having a great time. And also, the expectation is that the DH will be in the
Yeah.
National League next year, which will give him even more, opportunities, and he won't have to play as much defense. So, honestly, I'd say, the way things are going, I think it's probably a no-brainer. Like, the guy's made a ton of money. It's not like he's going to be looking for another big contract. He clearly loves being on the Dodgers. He's been in Southern California for a while now, so I doubt he wants to pick up his family and move. He's got a chance to win a World Series
Yeah.
here, and he will next year as well. So I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be back the way things are going.
Yeah, and I mean, on one hand, is there a team that could potentially offer him more playing time? That was what he was supposedly after when he was released from the Angels. Based on the fact that he signed with the Dodgers, I would guess that nobody was offering him a full-time job. Now, he's performed
Yeah.
much better for the Dodgers, and with the DH, is there a National League team that would be willing to throw some money at him and say, you'll be our everyday DH because we want to sell some tickets and people want to come see Albert Pujols? And how much does that matter to him versus the Dodgers, who basically would probably say to him, hey, you're going to play a bunch. It's not going to be every day. It might be every other day between playing some first base here and there and DHing, when the matchup is what we want it to be, pinch hitting on days that you're not, that kind of thing. But I definitely think it's an interesting one. The other point worth making, the Dodgers don't have position players close to the major leagues in the minors. So it's not like their AA and AAA teams are stocked with talent. You've got the guys that we've already seen: DJ Peters, Sheldon Noisy, Zach
Right.
Rex, Luke Raley. So we've already seen those guys. Now, could they be much better a year from now? Sure, it's possible. A guy like Sheldon Noisy, especially, I think the Dodgers probably have higher hopes for. A guy like Rex and Raley are a little bit up there in age, if I'm not mistaken. So
Yeah.
they might kind of already be peaking as quad A type guys. DJ Peters, of course, looked pretty overmatched as well. So it's not like the Dodgers have all these guys coming up that they're going to need to find roster spots for. Keibert Ruiz being one, Michael Busch, who's been on a tear. Aside from those two, there's not really anybody in the minor leagues that the Dodgers are going to feel the need to put a roster spot on. So I think that's worth pointing out. We saw how the Dodgers hung on with guys like David Freese and Chase Utley. And Albert Pujols, you could argue, has been almost more effective than either of those guys because while he's hitting for average, he's also hitting for power, which Freese and Utley weren't necessarily providing. So definitely a good question there, I think. And I'm with you. I mean, why not? I mean, he's
Yeah.
provided exactly what you're looking for. He's a positive clubhouse guy. So why not? Jason asks.
I'd say maybe the one other option that I don't know if he'll have it, but maybe that he'd be interested in is maybe, returning to St. Louis and finishing
Yeah.
out his career there. I think that would maybe be intriguing to him, but we'll see. Let's worry about winning a championship this year, and then we could talk off season.
Yeah, Jason asks, following up on the Bellinger struggles that he's had, we know he's, a couple of years away from free agency. A guy like Bellinger, I mean, I'll rephrase the question like this. Is there, how much damage could a guy like Bellinger do to his potential pending free agency a few years from now with a year like this? Like, as an MVP, do you just write it all off and say, well, we've seen the highs and we'll just pay him no matter what? Or does the inconsistency of a guy like Bellinger make you a little bit nervous when it comes to a huge contract extension?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say if this was his contract year, then it would kind of affect him just because that's the last, people have seen
Yeah.
of him, and maybe like sign a 1-year type deal to try to reestablish his value. But let's say he has a bad year now and then comes back and has 2 more all-star seasons. Like, I don't think when he reaches free agency, anyone's going to be
Yeah.
looking at this year and saying, that's who he is, when you have, all these other all-star, MVP, rookie of the year, like type of accolades to look at. And I will say, even though he's not hitting right now, like, he's still a great defender in center field, so he still brings some value. So I think he's going to be okay in free agency. We'll see what kind of years he has the next couple
Yeah.
of years, and even we'll see what he does to finish out this year. Like, he's got like a 600 OPS right now. Even if he's bad the rest of the year, I still expect him to be better than
Yeah.
that. Like, that's really bad. So we'll just see. But I think even when he's not hitting, he's still valuable to the team. I want to
Yeah,
say
and
that.
to your point, he has 2 more full seasons with the Dodgers after this in arbitration. So he's not a free agent until 2024. So lots of time. I think you mentioned this defensively. He's worth a lot just strictly on defense alone.
Yeah.
So I mean, even if the average never comes around, if it's a guy who can get you 30 to 35 home runs, play elite defense at an elite position like center field, and run well, I mean that's worth it itself, even if he never reaches back to MVP level.
Definitely.
A
Definitely.
couple questions in here talking about pitchers to trade for, trade pieces, that kind of thing. I'm going to press pause on those. Daniel and I are going to record on Monday, and basically that whole show is going to be talking about conversations like that. I'll preface and I'll forewarn Daniel, I have a crazy, absolutely crazy trade proposal to
Oh
throw you on
man.
Monday. So you will be
Okay.
shocked by this. Is my guess. I ran this past somebody earlier to make sure that I wasn't crazy, and I didn't get a "you're crazy" response. So just keep that one, just tuck that one away. But yes, we're gonna talk
Okay.
starting pitching, whether the Dodgers trade, who they would trade. As far as who to trade, one thing I would say, Justin Lorber and I did 2 pieces, one of which was kind of a pre-draft preview. I would check out that episode with Justin because he specifically asked that question, and I thought he had a great take in just thinking, who are the types of players the Dodgers have traded in years past? What are some of the characteristics of them? And he pointed out what those characteristics were and then who some of the guys were that fit that might be trade pieces. So it's really interesting. The Dodgers traditionally don't trade. I know Keibert Ruiz's name is the name that gets mentioned. The Dodgers historically do not trade the obvious guy. The Cody Bellingers, the Corey
Yeah.
Seagers, the Walker Buehlers, the Dustin Mays, those guys have all stayed Dodgers. And so chances are, if they do trade some guys, it won't be the ones you're most familiar with, but we'll see. We'll see there. Deborah asks, what happens to Lux when Corey Seager comes back? So Corey Seager becomes the everyday shortstop. Then you've got
Yeah.
AJ Pollock in left field. You've got Chris Taylor at second base. Gavin Lux. I
Yeah.
mean, is he the? Obviously, all these guys will rotate. Does Gavin Lux have the most to lose when Corey Seager comes back? My answer is yes. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely with you. But maybe a couple weeks ago, I would have said it's Pollock that has the most to lose. But then he became the hottest hitter on the planet all of a sudden, and has kind of played his way into more playing time. So yeah, I definitely think Lux is going to lose, a majority of the time. He'll still get some time at second base. I still think they're going to, rest Seager on occasion. He's not going to be playing every single game, so Lux could slide in at short there. But I'm just thinking, like, kind of looking ahead to the postseason here. When you look, basically the only kind of option for Lux, or the only way for him to really get playing time, would be kind of as a platoon with Pollock, with Chris Taylor moving back and forth between the positions. We know Lux has struggled against left-handed pitching, and we know, we've seen, even though Pollock is hot right now, we've seen him struggle against right-handed pitching, specifically in the postseason the last couple
Yeah.
years. So that kind of naturally just lends to a platoon there where Lux could play against righties, and when he's in, Chris Taylor plays left field, and then Pollock could play against lefties, and then Taylor moves over to second base in that scenario. But I think Lux he's got to earn his playing time. Like, a majority, he's been playing almost every day this year, but it's been because of injuries for the most
Yeah.
part. Like, I think when everyone's healthy, he's kind of the odd man out. Now he still could get hot. Like, we haven't really seen him get hot offensively, and that could happen at some point in the next 70 games, and then he earns more playing time. But yeah, I definitely think right now he's probably the guy that's going to lose the most playing time when Corey gets back.
312 on base percentage, 355 slugging percentage for Lux. I do wonder, he's still a young guy. Neither of us are completely out on him. I mean, I'll be honest. I think his value has dropped, like you would hope for a guy with a pedigree as high as his. that it would have clicked at some point by now, but he's still young, tons of time in front of him. I do think he probably benefits from sort of the Albert Pujols treatment where, hey, we're just going to put you in the best situations possible. Like, you're not
Right.
going to just play every single day, but it's just going to be like, hey, you hit this guy well, you see this guy well, we're going to give you a couple at bats, that kind of thing. Now, it could go the opposite direction and the pressure could mount then, because then he feels like, oh, I only get to play every third day, so I need to absolutely crush it every time I'm out there. But it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see how that plays out. But I mean, AJ Pollock's the defending player of the week. Chris Taylor, like, has been one of the best players in baseball this season. So Bellinger, Betts, Turner, like Muncy, none of those guys, Seager, none of those guys are going anywhere. So it's just the
Yeah.
nature of the Dodgers roster as it is. And I think it makes the Dodgers better if Gavin Lux is one of your bench bats. Look, we've been through enough crappy stretches where the guys on the bench were nobody that you could trust. If all of a sudden it's Lux, McKinstry, Pujols down there, then you feel pretty good about it. Now, Matt Beatty down there, Austin Barnes, they got to figure something out. That's too many guys, but we'll see what happens there. Let's see if we got any more questions, and if not, we could talk about, yes, Paul points out we need pitching. I think everybody agrees with that. Starting pitching, at least. I mean, I will say I saw a couple of people earlier on sort of hating on the Dodger bullpen. I just don't get the hate on the Dodgers bullpen, if I'm being honest.
I don't either.
Like,
I don't either.
I think one thing I've been on all year, which I think is fairly true, is I wonder if people they look at the Dodger bullpen and they don't see a elite closer, and they just assume that the bullpen's not good. Now, one thing I would say is Kenley Jansen, statistically, ERA, etc., has been elite. I mean, he's one of the top 5 to 10, probably top 5 to 7 closers in all of baseball this year when you look at his statistics. Now, I know it hasn't felt like that. We've all watched the games, and it doesn't feel that good, but it's felt really, really good. It just hasn't felt elite. Trinan is really good. Nelson has been really good. Gonzalez, Bickford, you just go down the list. I mean, I don't know what the concern is with the bullpen. Maybe folks that are in the chat could tell me if you're concerned about the bullpen. You tell me. Deborah points out the Dodgers have the lowest ERA in all of baseball. We know the starting pitching has been a big part of that. David Price, another guy I didn't mention. Am I missing something on the bullpen?
No, I think you also have to consider that the bullpen's been, overworked for the most part. They've been having bullpen games every 5th day for a majority of the season. So that's, plays a role in that as well. But I think a lot of it just stems from, Kenley could have a 0.00 ERA, but when he enters the game, we're still not going to fully trust him until we see it happen. It just is what it is. We've been watching this happen for too many years now.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen him be great in the regular season, and then when October comes around, he's faltered. So I think that's probably what a lot of the distrust in the bullpen stems from. Like I think when you look, if you look at our 8th inning guy, Trinan, or 7th, they don't have set roles like innings. But if you look at our other high leverage guys, like, you could put those guys up against any other team in the leagues, top 4 or 5 high leverage guys. I'd take our guys. I just think it stems from, like you said, not having an elite closer, a guy who, like early in Kenley's career, when it was the 9th inning and he's coming through those gates, you knew the game was over. Like, even though he's been great this year, it doesn't feel like that, So I'm kind of with the people on that. But I'd say overall, I think this bullpen's really good. I think starting pitching is more important right now when we're looking at the trade deadline. I still think they'll probably add a reliever or maybe even 2 just for like depth purposes. But I think if they're going to make a big move, it would be in the rotation, not necessarily the bullpen.
Well, and that's the last question we'll get to here. Nomo FOMO, who's going to replace Kershaw till he comes back? Obviously, who's going to replace Trevor Bauer is the other question here. You've got Buehler, you've got Urias, you've got Gonsolin. Gonsolin fully stretched out. You would hope that he can get you, 85 to 100 pitches, 5 to 6 innings moving forward. We talked about David Price as the option. We don't know how stretched out necessarily he's going to be. If you're going to stretch a guy out, first of all, he's already pitched, 30 to 40 pitches in a game. He had the All-Star break, probably got a bullpen session in, you would think, at some point. So, at the very least, I would imagine that Price can get you 55, 60, 65 pitches in his next start. What would you do in that 5th spot then? Do you go to a guy like Josiah Gray, who needs to be added to the 40-man roster? Do you go to a guy like Edwin Uceda, who I guess would probably be coming off of the 10-day injured list? Mitch White, they've got some guys who theoretically could give you length. But what would you, Gerardo Carrillo is another guy as well. So what would you do with that every fifth spot as we speak?
Yeah, I mean, Dave Roberts kind of hinted, before today's game that Josiah Gray is going to be an option, but just not yet. Like he's still getting built up himself. Like he missed a lot of time with injury. I think he threw like 63 pitches. He pitched yesterday with OKC. So he's still getting built up, but maybe, in a week or two, if he's at 80, 85 pitches, I think he'd probably be the first option. He's the highly touted prospect of the bunch.
Yeah.
I know in a perfect world, he'd just be in AAA the rest of this year. Like I think that was the expectation, at the beginning of the year when the Dodgers had, what felt like all the starting pitching
Yeah.
depth in the world, which they clearly did not, as we're seeing now. But I think he's probably the primary option. I know a lot of people are also calling for Ryan Pepio, but he's still really young. He's only in AA right now, and it's not unheard of to go straight from AA to the big leagues. But I think just the fact that he's not even in AAA is probably signals that they're probably not, really close to calling him up. Maybe in September.
Yeah.
But yeah, right now they just kind of got to piece it together. They might have another bullpen game, this week. You mentioned a couple guys, Mitch White's, the Usadas of the
Get you
world. Those are
fired
guys
up,
who those are guys who in theory, yeah, you could get some length from them, but then if they're giving up all these runs, you're not just going to leave them out there like to throw 80, 90 pitches or whatever. I mean,
Maybe you
if
should.
the game well, if the game's not competitive,
Yeah.
yes, but if it's like a 5-4 game or
Yeah.
something, like that's still a winnable game there. You're not just going to let them wear it like that. So we'll see. I guess the options clearly are not great. I mean, there's no one I named, like even Josiah Gray, he hasn't pitched in the big league, so it's not like, oh yeah, he's a top prospect, he's going to come up and deal right away. Like you never know what you're going to get out of a guy like that, especially considering he hasn't pitched all year. So we'll see. I think it's kind of going to be a lot of the same that we saw in the first half, like just kind of piecing it together. Bullpen game here, bullpen game there. But I think, hopefully Price could get built up pretty quickly here. You mentioned Gonsolin is basically fully built up, now. So it's not looking great, but I think they just got to piece it together until Kershaw gets back in a month or whenever that is.
Yeah.
Or also the deadline is coming up too. They're probably going to add someone.
Yeah, so going back to Gray, you pointed out he threw 68 pitches last night, 4 2/3. Dave Roberts had said they were trying to build him up to 5 innings and 75 pitches. So he's 1 out and 7 pitches away from that. His spot in the rotation, I believe, lines up with the hole that the Dodgers have. And now he's been really good up until this start. This start, he faced 18 batters, 4 2/3. Again, he did allow just 4 hits, no walks, but he did allow 3 earned runs on 2 home runs. He had 7 strikeouts. So 4 hits, no walks, 7 strikeouts, and 4 2/3, all good. 2 home runs, 3 earned, not great. Prior to that, the 2 starts building up to this, he threw 6 innings pitched, had 5 strikeouts, has yet to walk a batter, and allowed just 1 hit. So kind of, he pitched once in May. Since then, he's thrown 10.2 innings, 5 hits, 3 earned runs, 12 strikeouts, and no walks. So that's what you kind of want to see from a guy like that. As we said, they would need to make spot on the 40-man roster for him. So you'd be curious to see what they do there. Not to mention that as soon as Victor Gonzalez, who had a rehab appearance tonight, when he comes back, they'll need to find a spot on the 26-man roster for him. So they've got some moving pieces from a roster perspective. Corey Seager on the 60-day IL, so he's not on the 40-man. So that's another spot. So my guess is some of these relievers, they're going to have to trim some fat on that kind of in that situation. Bobby Wall, who they released, he was then reback. He cleared waivers and is back in the organization. So that's good news for the Dodgers there. THP points out the 3 earned runs from Gray in the AAA Pacific Coast League is not bad at all, which is fair.
Yeah.
Which is fair.
That's
absolutely. Fair. Cole Hamels, let's get out of here on this one. Cole Hamels had an appearance, 20 teams in attendance. You could bet all the money in your wallet the Dodgers were one of those 20 teams. Apparently teams have already been in contact with him. We have no idea what he looked like. I have heard no reports whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd sign him. Why not? Like, there's no downside. Like, just bring him in. You need a starter. How stretched out is he? I mean, could he throw you 85 pitches tomorrow? Could he get me 4 or 5 innings? Because he can't be worse than Mitch White and Edwin Uceda.
Yeah, that's a fair point right there. Yeah, I'm with you there. You know, we have no clue what he looks like. We haven't seen him pitch since 2019, I believe. I don't think he pitched last year either. So,
Correct.
you know, who knows? But he does have some experience. You know, he used to be a big game pitcher back in the day. He's obviously, you know, a lot older now. But yeah, I mean, we just went through, you know, the starting rotation options. It's not like, you know, it's not great.
Yeah.
So if, like you said, if Cole Hamels is stretched out, if he wants to come here, he's probably not going to sign for a lot of money, and not like that matters
Yeah.
anyways. The Dodgers are well above the luxury tax at this point. Might as well just spend as much as possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, give it a shot if he wants to come here. Who knows? You know, you said 20 teams took a look at him, so I'm sure, you know, there's plenty of other teams that could use starting pitching as well. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I'm not really expecting the Dodgers to sign him, but if they do, I'll welcome it. You know, it's not like we got better options at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm thinking like, what's the gap between him and a guy like Matthew Boyd from the Tigers that might cost you a couple prospects to give up? Like, is it that big of a gap? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I don't know where Hamels is at. Like, 2019 Hamels, probably not that big of a gap. Now, it's been 2 years and he's 2 years older, so maybe he's complete trash.
Yeah.
Maybe the fastball's sitting 89 and nothing moves and he has no buildup, you know? But obviously, the other thing is you've only got a couple weeks till the trade deadline, and after that, you're kind of stuck. So you don't want to bet on Cole Hamels and then find out a month from now that you got fool's gold there for a little bit. So a couple people saying they don't want to say Edwin Uceda again. I'm not out on Edwin Uceda forever. We've seen this year that he's got a couple nice pitches, but he needs some seasoning. He needs some reps down there.
I also think he's gotten screwed by. He's been put in some pretty rough situations, like extra inning games with a man on second in a tie game. Like he belongs nowhere near situations like that, but he's been kind of forced into it because of necessity. So he's kind of gotten screwed a little there. But yeah, I think it's clear he needs some more time in AAA to. Like, the stuff is not bad, but he just hasn't been able to put it together, you know, by any means.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there you have it. Dodgers win 10-4 against the Rockies tonight. I want to give one shout out. Jake in Simi Valley, my buddy sent me this text. A friend of mine who's a fan of the show, he had DodgerHeads t-shirts made. He was wearing one of his DodgerHeads t-shirts out to, I believe it was a U-Haul in Simi Valley. Jake recognized the shirt, said, hey, I like the show. So you weren't talking to me. You weren't talking to Daniel, but shout out to Jake. Hopefully I didn't screw that name up. Jake in Simi Valley.
That's cool.
So there you go. There's only a few of those shirts that exist. Apparently one of them got noticed in Simi Valley, which is awesome. So thank you for that. Thanks for everybody for joining us. Those on YouTube, those on Facebook, those watching this recorded. We appreciate you all. That's Daniel. I'm Jeff. We will be back on Monday with a recorded show. Again, talking a lot about potential trades, guys who could be on their way out, guys who could be on their way in. All sorts of stuff. If you missed it, Justin Lorber and I sat down earlier in the week, recapped the entire Dodgers draft. We also recapped the Dodgers first-round pick. Both of those are worth seeing. If you want to go back one even further, you could look at sort of a state of the farm system, some good stuff there on guys at every level that he likes that are trending up, guys that are trending down, some notes on Cody Hosey, who's a guy I know a lot of people have questions about. So good stuff there. So we appreciate you. Good news. Dodgers win 10-4. They beat the Rockies. Hopefully they can get a couple more wins. Maybe on Monday. Who knows? Maybe the Broom makes an appearance. It's in play. The Broom making an appearance on Monday is in play. So that's Daniel. I'm Jeff. As always, we appreciate you. Subscribe to Dodger Blue 1958. Ring the notification bell, and we'll see you soon.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.